Geneva, Switzerland, September 10th, 1898. A peaceful autumn morning. Church bells echo in the distance. Boats drift gently across Lake Léman, catching the golden sunlight on their rippling reflections. Along the busy Quai du Mont Blanc, a woman in a pure white dress walks slowly. She is almost 61, yet her posture is straight as an arrow. Her silver hair is tied neatly beneath a simple hat. Her eyes gaze far ahead, eyes that seem no longer connected to this world. No one knows that this woman is Elisabeth of Austria, Empress of Austria, Queen of Hungary, once celebrated across Europe as the most beautiful woman in the world. At her side is only one companion, her lady-in-waiting, Irma Stare. No royal guards, no grand entourage. No one notices her. Then suddenly, a thin, disheveled young man springs from the crowd. Luigi Lucchini, 25 years old, an Italian laborer, a radical anarchist, and the man about to change history. In his hand is a sharpened metal file 10 centimeters long, ground into the shape of a dagger. The attack happens so quickly no one truly sees it. A single thrust straight into the Empress' left breast. Elisabeth staggers, but she does not fall. She does not scream. She simply asks, calmly, "What just happened?" "I think someone slapped me," she says, touching her chest. Irma sees no blood, no wound. The blow had been sealed instantly by Sisi's tight corset. Sisi continues walking. She boards the steamer in Geneva as planned. She sits down in her cabin. She even smiles faintly at Irma. But then, "Irma, I cannot breathe." The corset is loosened, and only then do they see it. A growing stain of dark red spreading across the white fabric beneath. She is rushed back to the Beau Rivage Hotel. Doctors are called, but it is too late. The sharpened file had pierced her heart. 40 minutes after being struck, the heart of Empress Elisabeth stops. Her final words are not, "Tell my children," or "Tell Franz I love him." Her final question is simple: "What has happened to me?" As if, after 61 years, she still could not understand what had happened to her life. The tragedy of Sisi was not her death. Her tragedy was the way she lived like a wandering soul, trapped in a world she never wanted to belong to. And the question that has haunted history for more than a century remains: what transformed a free-spirited 16-year-old girl into a 60-year-old woman who wished only for death? To understand her death, we must return 45 years earlier to a wild Bavarian girl who never dreamed of palaces, who wanted only to ride freely through the fields, write poems by the lakes, and never bow to anyone. Bavaria, Germany, 1853. If you wandered near Lake Starnberg at dawn, you might see a 15-year-old girl racing across fields of wildflowers on horseback. No saddle, no restraint. Just raw, unfiltered freedom. Her long brown hair streams behind her. Her laughter blends with the wind. This is Elisabeth Amalie Eugenie, daughter of Duke Maximilian of Bavaria, but everyone calls her Sisi. Her family, the Wittelsbachs, is nothing like the stiff European courts. Her father, Duke Max, is a poetic eccentric who loves roaming the countryside more than governing. He raises his children with freedom rather than discipline. Sisi climbs mountains, swims in lakes, rides horses bareback. She writes poetry, plays the harp, reads Shakespeare and Goethe. But no one teaches her court etiquette. No one teaches her how to bow, how to behave in a royal court, how to survive one. And no one prepares her for the fate rushing toward her. Her mother, Ludovica, is the sister of Archduchess Sophie, mother of Emperor Franz Joseph of Austria, and Sophie is searching for a wife for her son. The plan is clear. Helena, Sisi's older sister, refined and trained in every royal protocol, is the chosen bride. Instated, without, and a trammed pleasant bride. In August 1853, Ludovica brings Helena to Bad Ischl, the Austrian imperial summer residence, to accidentally meet the emperor. She brings Sisi along only as company. But Sophie miscalculates something. When Emperor Franz Joseph, 23, ruler of a vast empire, walks into the room and sees Sisi, the world stops. Helena is beautiful, polished, perfect for the role of empress. But Sisi is different. She doesn't try to impress anyone. She sits quietly, staring out the window with her wide, melancholic eyes. When Franz asks her a question, she replies honestly, without flattery. When she smiles rare, delicate, it feels like sunlight breaking through clouds. Franz falls instantly, irreversibly in love. The next day, during his birthday celebration on August 18th, Franz must choose a bouquet to present to the girl he wants to marry. Sophie waits confidently, certain he will choose Helena. Instead, Franz walks straight to Sisi. He kneels. He offers her the bouquet. "I want only you, no one else." The room freezes. Sisi, just 15, does not know what to do. She looks to her mother, to Helena, who fights back tears, to Sophie, who hides her fury behind a rigid smile, and then Sisi nods. Not because she loves Franz, but because she does not know how to say no to an emperor. Sometimes the biggest decisions of our lives aren't made by us. They're made for us. Sisi did not choose to become empress. Franz chose her. And that choice would shape the next 45 years of her life. Years spent fighting to reclaim the autonomy she lost that day. News spreads quickly across Europe. The Emperor of Austria is to wed the 16-year-old Bavarian princess. Newspapers call it the fairy tale of the century. Artists begin sketching Sisi's face. Poets write verses about her beauty. The continent waits breathlessly to see the young bride. But no one asks Sisi how she feels. No one sees her crying at night in Bavaria. No one hears her whisper to Helena, "I don't want to go. I'm afraid." But the wedding is arranged. Invitations have been sent. And a 16-year-old girl has no power to change the destiny of an empire. Vienna, April 24th, 1854. If you had stood among the hundreds of thousands lining the streets that day, you would have witnessed one of the grandest royal weddings of the 19th century. Fireworks lit up the sky. Carriages gilded in gold rolled through the city. Music thundered across Vienna. And at the center of it all was a 16-year-old bride struggling to breathe under a 10-kilogram wedding gown. Sisi arrived in Vienna 3 days before the ceremony. It was the first time she left Bavaria. The first time she saw a true capital city. The first time she realized that she was no longer simply Sisi. She was now Ihre Majestät, Her Majesty. On her first evening at the Hofburg Palace, she joined her first imperial dinner. 70 people seated around her, all watching her, every movement. Sisi picked up her fork with her left hand. She was left-handed. Instantly, an elderly noblewoman snapped, "Her Majesty must use her right hand." Sisi flushed with embarrassment and switched hands. She took a sip of water before the meal began. Her Majesty must wait until the Emperor drinks first. She looked to Franz for help. He only smiled apologetically. "It's protocol, my love. You'll get used to it." But she never would. On the wedding day, Sisi woke at 5 a.m. She was dressed in 7 layers of clothing. Her corset pulled so tight she could barely breathe. And the silver bridal gown, 10 kilograms, with a 5-meter train, was placed over it. Her hair was braided into an elaborate crown, topped with a diamond tiara weighing over 1 kilogram. When Sisi looked in the mirror, she didn't recognize the girl staring back. "I look like a doll," she whispered. And that was exactly what the court wanted. The ceremony lasted 4 hours. The Augustiner Kirche was packed with royalty from across Europe. Sisi had to stand the entire time, no sitting, no rest. When Franz slipped the ring onto her finger, she felt as though she were being locked into shackles. But the hardest part wasn't over. After the wedding came the défilé, a ritual in which over 2,000 nobles filed past the imperial couple. Each bowed. Each expected a precise nod in return, no deeper, no shallower. 3 hours later, Sisi's legs trembled. She longed to sit, but no one allowed it. "The Empress must not appear weak," Sophie declared coldly. That night, finally alone in her bridal chamber, Sisi sat on the bed and cried. Franz entered, confused. "Did I do something wrong, my love?" "You did nothing wrong," Sisi sobbed. "It's just, this is not the life I want." "You'll get used to it," Franz repeated gently. "You'll learn to love this place." But how could she love a prison? The Hofburg Palace, its golden walls, frescoed ceilings, glittering halls was beautiful on the outside. But inside, every wall was a rule, every room a burden. Sisi learned, on her very first night, that she no longer belonged to herself. She belonged to the Habsburg Empire. And if she thought the wedding was the hardest part, she was wrong, because the most powerful woman in the palace was not the young empress. It was her mother-in-law, Archduchess Sophie, and the battle between these two women would shape the rest of Sisi's life. There is an unspoken rule in imperial courts. The one who holds power is not the one who wears the crown, but the one who controls the person wearing it. And in the Hofburg Palace, that person was Archduchess Sophie, the woman the entire court whispered about in secret, der einzige Mann bei Hof, the only man at court. Sophie was not the empress, but she ruled as though she were. Born in 1805, raised in one of Europe's strictest courts, she learned early how to command, manipulate, and dominate. When her husband, Archduke Franz Karl, proved too weak to govern, Sophie stepped in. She molded her son, Franz Joseph, into an emperor at only 18. Franz adored his mother, respected her, feared her. So when 16-year-old Sisi, untrained, innocent, unprepared, entered the palace, Sophie immediately sensed danger. Not because Sisi sought power, but because Franz loved her. And if Franz began listening to Sisi more than to his mother, Sophie would lose her grip on the empire. So she began educating the young empress. If Sisi asked for Bavarian food, Sophie insisted the empress must eat Austrian cuisine. If Sisi preferred simple dresses, Sophie dictated, the empress must wear what I choose. If Sisi hoped to spend time alone with Franz, Sophie intervened. The emperor has far more important duties. But the true war began when Sisi became pregnant. In March 1855, less than a year after the wedding, Sisi gave birth to her first child, a daughter. She was named Sophie, after her grandmother. And the moment she was born, the unraveling began. Archduchess Sophie entered the room, looked at the infant, and ordered, "Take the child to my quarters." But Sisi lay weak from labor, reaching out. "I want to keep her with me." "You are far too young," Sophie said coolly. "You know nothing of raising a royal child. The baby will be brought up properly." And the child was taken away. Sisi was not allowed to nurse her own daughter. Sophie hired a wet nurse. Sisi could not choose the baby's clothes. Sophie decided everything. Sisi could not determine where the child slept, ate, or played. She needed Sophie's permission even to visit her. One night, Sisi tried to sneak into her daughter's room, simply to hold her. Sophie discovered this and summoned the guards. From now on, the nursery doors will be locked at night. Sisi ran to Franz, crying, "Please, speak to your mother. She took our child from me. I have a right." Franz embraced her, but said gently, "My mother has experience. She raised my brothers and me well. Trust her, my love." "I don't want to trust her," Sisi cried. "I want to be a mother!" But no one listened. A year later, Sisi gave birth to her second daughter, Gisela, and once again, Sophie seized control. "Both children will stay in my apartments," she declared. "You may visit them when I permit it." That was the moment Sisi truly broke. She had lost her freedom, her identity, her voice, and now, the most natural right a woman possesses, the right to raise her own children, had been ripped from her hands. Power is not the crown or the throne. Power is having the authority to dictate another person's life. And by taking Sisi's daughters, Sophie was not just controlling the future heirs, she was destroying Sisi's spirit. Because a woman forbidden from loving her own children will slowly lose the will to live. But human beings have a strange defense mechanism. When you cannot control the world around you, you begin controlling the only thing left, your own body. And for Sisi, that obsession was about to begin. There is a famous saying about Sisi. She did not possess beauty. Beauty possessed her. And it was truer than anyone realized. For Sisi, beauty was not a gift. It was the only weapon she had left after everything else had been taken from her. After Sophie tore away her children, Sisi fell into her first deep depression. She was 18. With 2 daughters she was forbidden to raise, trapped in a marriage where her husband could not or would not defend her. The imperial doctors called it nervous exhaustion. But no one asked why. One night, Sisi stood before the mirror in her bedchamber, staring at her own reflection. And she realized something. This, her body, her face, her hair, was the only thing still truly hers. The court could dictate what she ate, what she wore, what she said, where she went, but they could not dictate how she looked. So beauty became her obsession. Sisi's hair reached down to her ankles, nearly 1.5 meters long. When wet, it weighed over 2 kilograms. Every day, her hairdresser, Fanny Fafalik, spent 2 to 3 hours brushing and braiding it. If more than 10 hairs fell during brushing, Fanny was scolded. Sisi's hair care mixture included egg yolk, cognac, and rum oil left on overnight. She washed her hair once a week, a process that took the entire day. While waiting, she read Heinrich Heine's poetry. Each night, her hair was coated in a special oil made from the antlers of Carpathian deer. In her bedroom, Sisi installed gymnastic equipment, rings, a balance beam, weights, pull-up bars. At 6 a.m. every morning, she performed 100 pull-ups. Then she walked 8 to 10 kilometers at a rapid pace. In the afternoon, she rode horses for hours, not leisurely riding, but competitive, dangerous hunts and jumps. In England, where she often traveled to hunt foxes, male aristocrats admitted, "The Empress of Austria is the finest rider in Europe." Behind the admiration, however, was a brutal truth. Sisi exercised to the point of exhaustion. She fainted often. Her legs were bruised constantly. Her body was breaking. Height, 172 centimeters. Weight, 50 kilograms. Waist, 50 centimeters. Every day she weighed herself. If she gained half a kilogram, she would fast the entire next day. Breakfast, black coffee plus 1 orange. Lunch, beef broth. She drank only the broth, never the meat, plus 1 boiled egg. Dinner, milk plus a piece of bread. Sometimes she drank nothing but lemon juice with honey for days. During certain periods, she consumed only oranges 6 to 8 a day. Doctors warned her, "Your Majesty will fall ill." "I'd rather die than grow fat," she replied. Every night, Sisi applied face masks made of crushed strawberries, whipped cream, and honey left on until morning. Each morning, she washed with rose water mixed with ice. Once a week, she bathed in water mixed with 20 liters of fresh cow's milk and olive oil. And strangest of all, she sometimes applied a face mask made of raw, minced beef for 30 minutes before rinsing it off with rose water. To the court, it was vanity. But in reality, it was a psychological disorder. A modern diagnosis would include anorexia nervosa, body dysmorphia, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and all of it stemmed from a single truth. Sisi had lost control of her life. So she clung desperately to the one thing she could control: her body. Her greatest fear was aging. At 30, she refused to be photographed ever again. All famous portraits of Sisi were painted when she was between 20 and 28. After that, she allowed no artist to capture her real likeness. She said, "I want the world to remember me as I was, not as I am." After 40, she never appeared in public without a fan or parasol covering her face. Not to shield from the sun, but to hide time itself. Franz wrote in a letter, "I do not understand why my wife hides her face, which remains beautiful." But Franz did not understand. For Sisi, beauty was the only thing she still owned. If she lost it, what would remain of her? Controlling her body was not vanity. It was survival. But even that was not enough to help her breathe inside the suffocating palace walls. So she began to do something no Habsburg empress had ever done before. She ran away. Not once, not twice, but hundreds of times, over 40 years. And each time she returned to Vienna, a little more of her soul had died. There was one question Franz asked Sisi countless times throughout their marriage. "Why can't you stay home?" And Sisi always gave the same answer: "Because I cannot breathe here." In 1866, years after the wedding, Sisi took her first journey. The official explanation: the Empress needs a change of air for her health. The truth: she was on the verge of losing her mind if she stayed in Vienna any longer. Her first destination was Madeira, a small, quiet island in the Atlantic. There, no one called her Your Majesty. There were no ceremonies, no Sophie, No suffocating court. She spent her days hiking mountains, writing poetry by the sea, reading under the sun. For the first time in 6 years, she felt alive. But then Franz wrote, "Vienna needs you. The children need their mother. Please come home." Sisi returned. And the moment she stepped out of the carriage at the Hofburg, the air left her lungs. She was back inside the golden cage. So she ran again. In 1861, she visited Corfu for the first time, and she fell in love instantly. Greece, the land of myth, poetry, and freedom. She read Homer in ancient Greek. She memorized the Odyssey. She saw herself in Odysseus, a soul wandering the world, always searching for a home she could never truly return to. In 1890, she built the Achillean Palace on Corfu, modeled after ancient Greek architecture. It was filled with statues of gods: Achilles, Hera, Athena, but the largest statue was Achilles dying, an arrow in his heel. When asked why she chose that image, Sisi answered, "Because I understand what it is like to be wounded in the one place you thought was invulnerable." But the place Sisi loved most was Hungary. The first time she visited Budapest in 1857, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. She was treated like a human being. Hungarians did not see her as a symbol, a doll, or a political pawn. They saw her as Sisi. She learned Hungarian fluently, a nearly impossible language, in just 2 years. She wore traditional Hungarian dress. She named her youngest daughter Marie Valerie and raised her in the Hungarian way, not the Habsburg way. And then there was Count Gyula Andrassy. Gyula Andrassy, handsome, brilliant, magnetic. The only man who seemed to understand Sisi's soul. They spoke in Hungarian about politics, literature, freedom. Franz grew jealous. The court whispered. Europe speculated. But no one ever found proof. What the truth was, no one will ever know. But one thing is certain. Andrassy made Sisi smile in a way no one else could. When he died in 1890, Sisi wrote in her diary, "The only friend who understood me is gone. Now, I am completely alone." From 1860 to 1898, Sisi spent most of her life outside Vienna. 1860, 1862, Madeira, Corfu, 1863, 1866, Bavaria, Ischl, 1867, 1870, Hungary, her longest stays, 1875, 1880, England, for fox hunting, 1885, 1890, sailing the Mediterranean, 1890, 1898, wandering Europe with no fixed destination. Each year, she spent only a few weeks in Vienna. Franz pleaded, "Please come home. I miss you." But Sisi replied, "I cannot. I die there." She did not leave Vienna because she did not love Franz. She left because she could not survive the way Vienna loved her as a symbol, not a person. But no matter where she ran, her pain followed. And in 1889, it caught up with her in the form of a telegram. "Rudolf is dead. Come home immediately." The son she had not been allowed to raise. The son Sophie had taken from her arms. Now he was gone. And the way he died would haunt Sisi until the end of her life. Mayerling, a small hunting lodge hidden in the Vienna woods. On January 30th, 1889, it became the scene of one of the greatest royal mysteries in European history. And on that day, a part of Sisi's soul died with her son. Rudolf, the only son of Franz and Sisi, was born in 1858. He inherited his mother's intelligence, her sensitivity, and her darkness. But unlike Sisi, Rudolf also carried a crushing weight. He was the crown prince. He had to become emperor. From childhood, Sophie, his grandmother, and Franz imposed a brutal regiment on him. Up at 5 a.m., military drills, political lessons, a life with no room for emotion. Sisi wanted to protect him, but she wasn't there. She was wandering through Greece, Hungary, the seas, anywhere but Vienna. Rudolf grew up alone, in the same way Sisi had lived alone. As an adult, Rudolf became a liberal, a believer in democracy, progress, freedom. He despised the old Habsburg system his father embodied. He secretly wrote political articles criticizing the empire. When Franz discovered this, he was furious. "You are disgracing the family." Rudolf felt trapped, just like his mother 30 years before. In 1881, Rudolf married Princess Stephanie of Belgium. It was a political match. There was no love. Stephanie gave birth to a daughter, but Rudolf wanted a son, a future emperor. After that, Stephanie could no longer bear children. Rudolf felt like a failure as a husband, as a man, as an heir. He drank heavily, turned to morphine, fell deeper into despair. Then he met Mary Vetsera, 17, beautiful, infatuated with the crown prince. They exchanged letters. Mary wrote, "I am ready to die with you." And Rudolf, drowning in depression, believed death was the only escape. On January 29th, 1889, Rudolf brought Mary to the hunting lodge in Mayerling. They dined, drank, talked quietly. The next morning, the valet knocked. No answer. He broke down the door. Inside, Mary Vetsera lay on the bed, a bullet through her head. Rudolf sat lifeless in a chair, the gun still in his hand. What truly happened? No one knows. The official version: Rudolf shot Mary, then himself. But rumors spread like wildfire. Was Rudolf assassinated for his political views? Did Mary die first by accident? Was this a suicide pact? Was someone else in the room? The Habsburg court covered everything up. Mary was buried in secret. Documents were sealed. Servants disappeared. And Franz declared, "No one will speak Mary Vetsera's name again." Sisi receives the telegram. Sisi was in Italy when the telegram arrived. "Rudolf is dead. Come home at once." She did not scream. She did not faint. She simply stared out at the sea and whispered, "Now I know life has no meaning." When she returned to Vienna, she was not allowed to see Rudolf immediately. The court was preparing his body, concealing the bullet wounds. When she finally entered the room, she fell to her knees beside the coffin. She did not cry. She did not speak. She knelt there for hours. Franz tried to lift her. "You must rest." But Sisi looked at him with cold, hollow eyes. "You killed our son. You and your mother. You crushed him the way you crushed me." Franz had no answer. From that day on, Sisi wore only black. She gave up color entirely. In public, she covered her face with a large black fan or umbrella, not to block the sun, but to hide her grief and herself. Photographers tried to capture her image, but all they recorded was a moving shadow, a silhouette of sorrow. She wrote in her diary, "I am only a ghost waiting to rest. Rudolf has found his escape. Now I must find mine." In the 9 years that followed, that is exactly what she did. She waited for death. Some people die long before their hearts stop beating. And Sisi died in 1889 at Mayerling, with her son. The 9 years that followed were simply her body waiting for her soul to catch up. After Mayerling, Sisi became a completely different person. If she once wandered Europe searching for freedom, she now wandered to escape her pain. The black clothes and the hidden face. From the day Rudolf died, Sisi wore only black. No exceptions, no colors, no jewels, no music, no joy. Whenever she appeared in public, she carried a large black fan or a dark parasol to hide her face, not from the sunlight, but from the world. Journalists tried to photograph her. They failed. One wrote, "The Empress of Austria passes like a ghost. We never see her face, only a moving sorrow." Sisi had always written poetry, but after Mayerling, every line was about death. In 1890, she wrote, "I long for the wings of a seabird, to fly far from this world, where there is no court, no empire, only silence and rest." And another, "Death is the friend I wait for, the only one who will not judge me, the one who will take me to Rudolf and free me from this prison." Franz read her poems and wept. He wrote to her, "Please do not write such things. I fear I will lose you." She never replied. From 1889 to 1898, Sisi never stayed in one place for more than a month. January, Geneva. February, Menton March. Corfu. April, Taratet. May, Bad Kissingen. June, Ischl. Only a few days with Franz. July, Cap Martin. August, December. Traveling again. Her schedule had no pattern, no rhythm. Sometimes she decided to leave a city within hours. Her lady-in-waiting, Irma Starai, who accompanied her for 9 years, wrote, "The Empress was never happy. She did not seek happiness. She was only trying to escape her pain, but the pain followed her everywhere. Wherever she traveled, Sisi had one unusual request: find out where the local mental asylum is, not to seek treatment, but simply to visit. She visited asylums in France, Switzerland, Italy. She sat with the patients, listened to them, spoke softly with them. Irma once asked, 'Why do you do this?' Sisi answered, 'At least they are allowed to be mad. I must pretend to be sane.'" Marie Valerie, her youngest daughter, was the only child Sisi was allowed to raise. Not taken by Sophie, not locked away. Sisi called her das Einzige, kind, the only child. But her love became heavy, overwhelming. She wrote Valerie every day, demanded immediate replies, clung to her emotionally. When Valerie married in 1890, Sisi wrote, "You have abandoned me. Now I am completely alone." Valerie loved her mother, but she also felt a release from the unbearable weight of being her mother's last reason to live. Franz Joseph loved Sisi until the end. That much is certain. He wrote her weekly letters, "My beloved, please come home. Vienna feels empty without you." Sisi's replies were short. "I cannot. Do not ask again." Once, Franz traveled to Corfu to see her. They walked by the sea. They spoke little. He tried to take her hand. She pulled away. On the last night, Franz said, "I know I have failed you. I did not protect you. Forgive me." Sisi looked at him with empty eyes. Forgiveness is not enough. It never is. Franz knew then. He had lost her long ago. Despite everything, her beauty persisted in a haunting way. At 60, her waist was still 50 centimeters. Her hair still cascaded down her back. She still trained every day, but inside, her health was collapsing. Chronic back pain, joint pain, insomnia. Doctors begged her to rest, to eat, to live. She refused. "I do not wish to live long, only long enough to wait." Wait for what? No one dared to ask, but they all knew. In September 1898, Sisi decided to go to Geneva. No special reason, just another stop in her endless wandering. Franz wrote her, "Please do not go. I have a terrible feeling." But Sisi left. She stayed at the Beau Rivage Hotel. Her room overlooked the lake. Irma later recalled, "The Empress was strangely calm, as if she were expecting something." On September 9th, she visited Baroness Rothschild. They discussed beautiful sculptures and graveyards. Sisi said softly, "When I die, I hope to have an angel statue on my grave. An angel who weeps." The Baroness shivered, but said nothing. On the morning of September 10th, Sisi ate almost nothing. A cup of coffee, a slice of bread. She wore a simple black dress, no jewelry. Before leaving for the pier, she paused before the mirror, looked at herself for a long time, then whispered, "Today is a beautiful day," and walked out the door, into the death that had been waiting for her. Quai du Mont Blanc, Geneva. A Forcis, 1:35 p.m., September 10th, 1898. One strike, 1 second, and an empire lost its empress. Yet Sisi's death was unlike any other because even as she was dying, she kept walking as if nothing had happened. Luigi Lucchini was born in Paris in 1873, the illegitimate child of a prostitute. He grew up in orphanages, beaten, uneducated, drifting from job to job. As an adult, he worked as a laborer, wandering across Italy and Switzerland. Then he discovered anarchism, a movement that rejected all monarchies and all governments. And he made a decision. "I will kill a member of royalty. Any one of them. to show the world that no one is above another. His first target was Prince Philippe of Orléans, who was visiting Geneva, but Philippe cancelled his trip at the last minute. Lucheni was furious. He prepared to leave Geneva. Then he read the newspaper. The Empress of Austria is staying in Geneva. Lucheni smiled. Then she will be the one. He had no gun, no proper knife. All he possessed was a metal file. He spent the night sharpening it, turning it into a makeshift dagger. On the afternoon of September 10th, he went to the pier and waited. He didn't know what Sisi looked like. She had not been photographed publicly for 30 years. But he knew she would board the steamer at 1:40 p.m. At 1:35 p.m., Sisi and Irma Stare left the Beau Rivage Hotel. They walked quickly, afraid of missing the boat. Irma later said, "The Empress moved fast that day." She said, "We must hurry, Irma. The ship will leave soon." In the crowd, a thin man stepped forward. Irma thought he might be an admirer. Then Lucheni lunged. His right arm shot forward. A single thrust into Sisi's chest, straight into her heart. Irma screamed. Bystanders gasped. And Sisi? She staggered, but remained standing. She touched her chest. "What was that?" she asked. "Did that man steal something from me?" Irma saw no wound, no blood. The tight corset had closed the puncture instantly. "You are fine, Your Majesty. Nothing happened." Sisi nodded. "Then let us continue." She walked on, boarded the ship, sat down in the cabin. The boat departed. 5 minutes later, Irma, "I cannot breathe." Irma stared. Sisi's face had turned pale. "Please loosen my corset," Sisi whispered. When the corset was opened, blood, a deep red stain spreading across her white underdress. Irma screamed, "Stop the boat! Her Majesty is hurt!" The steamer turned back immediately. Sisi was carried to the Beau Rivage Hotel. Doctors arrived quickly, but they knew instantly. There was no saving her. The 10-centimeter blade had pierced her ribs and gone straight into her left ventricle. Because the wound was small and sealed by the corset, she had bled slowly, which was why she had kept walking. But now, her heart had pumped out the last of her blood. Sisi lay on the bed, her eyes opened once more. "What has happened to me?" Irma held her hand, crying, "You were stabbed, Your Majesty, but everything will be all right." Sisi gave a faint, sad smile. "No, Irma. At last I am free." At 2:10 p.m., her heart stopped. Lucheni was caught on the spot. When asked, "Why did you do this?" he replied proudly, "I wanted to kill a royal person, any one of them, and I succeeded." He showed no remorse. He was almost triumphant. At his trial he declared, "I am an anarchist. I do not recognize any judge." Switzerland had abolished the death penalty, so Lucheni received life in prison. 12 years later, in 1910, he hanged himself in his cell. Before dying, he wrote, "I do not regret killing the Empress of Austria, but I regret not researching her first. If I had known how much she already suffered, perhaps I would have chosen someone else." Sisi had waited 9 years for death, and when death finally came, she did not resist. Because after 44 years in a gilded cage, freedom had finally arrived. The news of her death spread across Europe like wildfire. Franz Joseph received the telegram at 5 p.m. He did not speak, did not cry. He sat alone in his office all night. The next morning he wrote in his diary, "No one will ever know how much I loved her." And perhaps Sisi knew, but love, no matter how deep, was never enough to save a soul born to be free, yet trapped behind walls of gold. More than 120 years have passed since Sisi's death. Yet her story still lives, still moves people, still forces millions to pause and reflect. Why? Because Sisi's story is not just about an empress. It is about every woman who has ever felt imprisoned by the life around her. Sisi's body was transported back to Vienna by special train. Thousands gathered along the tracks, silent, mourning, praying. When the coffin reached the Hofburg, Franz Joseph was waiting. He was 68, his hair white, his back bent. As the coffin was opened so he could see his wife one last time, he knelt. He clung to the casket and cried like a child. She never knew. She never knew how much I loved her. The funeral lasted 3 days. All of Europe went into mourning. Royal families from every corner of the continent traveled to Vienna, and when her coffin was lowered into the imperial crypt, the Kapuziner Gruft, an entire era ended. Franz Joseph lived 18 more years after Sisi's death. He never remarried. Every day, he placed a bouquet of violets, Sisi's favorite flower, on his desk. He kept her rooms untouched. No one was allowed to move a thing. Each night, before bed, he reread the letters she had written to him decades earlier. Letters from the days when they were young and in love. In 1916, Franz died at age 86, in the midst of World War I. The Habsburg Empire collapsed 2 years later. But before he died, Franz whispered, "At last, I will see her again." In the 1950 seconds, the famous Sisi trilogy by Ernst Marischka was released. Sisi, 1955. Sisi, the Young Empress, 1956. Sisi, Fateful Years of an Empress, 1957. Romy Schneider portrayed Sisi and became an icon. The films painted a romantic, glowing fairy tale. But it was not the real Sisi. Romy Schneider herself later said, "I hate those films. They turned a tragic woman into a fairy tale." But Sisi was no fairy tale. She was a tragedy. Yet the films were a sensation. Millions fell in love with the myth. And to this day, people come to Vienna searching for her. In 1992, the musical Elisabeth premiered in Vienna. Unlike the films, the musical was dark, honest, and raw. The central figure was not Sisi but death itself, personified as a seductive, mysterious man who follows her throughout her life. He calls to her, tempts her, haunts her, and in the end, she accepts his embrace. The musical was wildly successful, performed in more than 10 countries, because it captured the truth. Sisi was not a helpless victim. She was a fighter, fighting for freedom until her final breath. In Vienna's Hofburg Palace, there is now a museum dedicated entirely to Sisi. Inside are her gowns, her gym equipment, her hair care recipes, her handwritten poems and letters, love letters between her and Franz. 2 million visitors come each year. They do not come to see a glamorous empress. They come to see a woman in pain. And in her, they see themselves. Sisi appears in over 50 novels, 20-plus films, and TV series, countless songs, plays, and artworks, even video games and anime. She has become a symbol of timeless beauty, personal freedom, resistance against systems, mental health awareness, a mother's grief, the cost of being caged. More than anything, Sisi represents a truth many people feel but cannot say. Sometimes, the most beautiful lives are the ones that suffer the most behind closed doors.